Michigan. Welcome. I don't know what to call. I don't know how to. Can I just call you Reverend Murray? Is that
Dr.
okay?
Murray, Stephen Murray.
Dr. Murray. No, what do you want me to call you?
Dr. Murray.
Dr. Murray. I like Dr. Okay, so let me circle those two out of all these names. Dr. Murray. Thank you so much for joining me. It's nice to see you. It's been a while.
We've seen each other a lot off screen, but here we are in the studio. It's exciting.
And I certainly appreciate you joining me. So for people who don't know what ETS, and those are the acronyms for the Ecumenical Theological Seminary, tell me, what is ETS?
Sure. Ecumenical Theological Seminary is a graduate school for people training to become the next generation of ministers and pastors and priests and chaplains in the Detroit area. We've been operating since the 1950s, actually. Originally an outfit called the Institute for Advanced Pastoral Studies that began out on the Cranbrook campus. It was the first place in the nation where clergy from all sorts of different denominations could come together for continuing education. As time went by, that changed. It became the Ecumenical Theological Center in 1980, and eventually the Ecumenical Theological Seminary. What we do is that we moved off of Cranbrook when so many others were moving out of the city. We felt like our mission was to move into the heart of the city. So we're now at 2930 Woodward Avenue, Woodward and Edmond, just a little south of that.
Right across from the new stadium that's coming up?
Indeed, that stadium just keeps on getting larger and larger and obstructing our view more and more. But that's fine. We're glad to see it. And we are located in what used to be the First Presbyterian Church of Detroit, which is the first of the great big churches that were built on Woodward Avenue. And it's exciting for us that where the Protestant movement began in Detroit, that we kind of, as the inheritors of those that are training the next generation of the pastors and ministers of that group, that we're housed within that historic sanctuary.
Well, let me ask you just what I would ask if I were listening to this conversation. How do you train someone to be a religious leader?
Sure. Well, the very practical answer is that just as a law school offers a degree and a business school offers a degree, Ecumenical Theological Seminary, we offer a degree, and there's many denominations that actually require a graduate degree in this field. So we actually offer 4 different degrees. We offer the main degree that most people get who are training for the ministry is called the Master of Divinity degree. I know there couldn't be anything that sounds more ostentatious than the Master of Divinity, but yes, that's the degree. And that is typically for someone who's pursuing that full-time, that's a 3-year degree. For others that are wanting to do something that's a little more specialized, we have a 2-year master's degree that allows you to focus on certain things like chaplaincy or pastoral counseling or things like that. We have a brand new degree that actually, we are just announcing it now, that we've been approved for, which is an academic MA for someone who wants to do a Master of Arts in Biblical Studies or Theology or Social Ethics. That we have that degree, and that's going to be our first degree that you can actually get fully online.
Really?
So for people that don't want to necessarily commit to coming into the city to do all their coursework, they can do it from the comfort of their own home.
So, and I only say that because people always say it's my calling. God spoke to me, so you don't just wake up and pick up a Bible and then go start preaching. I mean, there is a method to the madness, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the most important things. Is yes, we do not have the degree that says you have a calling, but we do have the degree that says you've had some training so that you can be a responsible leader of a denomination.
And what kinds of things do you teach? I mean, in terms, because there is a business side to it as well. So there's the divinity side, and then there's the business side. What areas do you address?
Absolutely, I think quite honestly, everything under the sun is what we address. It's everything that you might expect: biblical studies, theology, ethics, church history, pastoral care and counseling, preaching. But then there's all the other aspects of what you need to do to run the business of a church. So everything around faith-based economics, looking at issues around parish administration, looking at issues of how to deal with church and society. We are putting people out there not just to serve within the church, but for churches to actually serve the communities in which they are a part. And that's one of the most important messages that we can offer.
Okay, now we're talking with Dr. Stephen Butler Murray. He's president and professor of systematic theology and preaching at the Ecumenical Theological Seminary, Detroit, Michigan. If you have any questions or comments, 313-209-9000. Something that kind of caught my interest is the ethical piece in there. Give me an example example of what, I mean, it kind of almost seems that it would be obvious, it would be assumed that a person that's going into some degree of religious representation would already have their ethics in place. What type of ethical challenges do you help them address?
Well, I mean, first off, there's the obvious things that are going on in society. We in Detroit had our own water crisis before there was a water crisis going on in Flint.
Right.
And one of our ethics professors, Jim Perkinson, is one of the forefront activists that's been involved in that. He's been out there, been arrested, been standing in front of utility trucks to keep people from getting their water shut off. So he's really somebody who is leading by example and brings that into the classroom. Teaches students it's not just good enough to know the ethics that have been taught over the course of the centuries of Christian doctrine, but you actually have to live it. And furthermore, it's not just you; it's that you and the communities of faith of which you're a part, you all have to live it together. So he very much provides that challenge to them. But certainly that we've authored public forums around the water crisis. We've done public forums around as the shootings have been the police-based shootings have been happening in Ferguson and Staten Island and Cleveland. We were one of the first groups in Detroit to bring people together to have an open forum to talk about what we see as the issues around those sorts of issues here in the Detroit region, because we don't want a Birmingham or a Grosse Pointe to be the next Ferguson. And all too often the chemistry, the alchemy of that is present here already. And so we want to break down those barriers and make sure that there is good relationships between those police communities and the citizens and the churches that are here.
And I guess the basis of everything, and Cliff and I were talking earlier, just in terms of what do we need to do to get along. I mean, and you say when you bring people together, is it as simple as just a very candid, respectful dialogue? Is that really the simple bridge to a better understanding?
I hate to say it, but quite honestly, Ecumenical Theological Seminary is often the only opportunity for the churches of the city and the suburbs to get together, to have honest conversations, to be equal participants in the conversations that happen. Because in our classrooms, there is no privilege of race or class or gender or economic status. We are all students together. We are faculty together. We come from 30 different denominations, among our hundreds of years. So we represent all sorts of denominations.
All right, we're going to, have we got time to take it, or do we take it after the break? You want to take it now? All right, we've got Kay on the line. Kay, thank you so much for calling. You have a question or comment for Dr. Murray?
Yes, I do have a question, and I realize that an accredited school, credits do transfer, but my question is in regards to biblical schools that have been started by pastors, like that have their own colleges, or for instance, Rhema Bible College, through Word of Faith, for example. And then I even know there are some correspondence schools that do have seminars at their actual location, and they're licensed by their particular state, where you can either go into a seminar or study at home, and for instance, get a doctorate in biblical counseling, and how a lot of people are referred to as doctor in their church. So are those, good degrees, or should they be recognized, or could you explain that to us?
Thank you for the call, Kay.
I certainly don't mean to talk down anybody that is pursuing theological education in any way, shape, or form, or churches which are trying to do more to have people be educated about the Bible and theology. But there are the truth of it is that in terms of accredited theological seminaries, there are only two in the city of Detroit. There is Ecumenical Theological Seminary, which serves the Protestant communities, and there's the Sacred Heart Theological Seminary, which serves the Roman Catholic community. And they really focus primarily on the training of the next generation of male priests within the Catholic Church. So we even see quite a few Roman Catholic women coming over to Ecumenical Theological Seminary to take classes with us. There are other accredited seminaries that are in the area that have their primary bases in other states. There's Ashland Theological Seminary, which is has an outpost in Southfield. There's the Moody Bible Institute, which has an outpost in Plymouth. Both of those are primarily out of state. seminaries. But within the city of Detroit itself, there are only 2 accredited seminaries, and that is unlike a lot of other major cities. If you go to Chicago or San Francisco or Boston, you will find as many as 10 or even 12 theological seminaries that are all accredited within one place.
So I'm going to ask you why. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, why is Detroit different in that regard? Is everybody making up their own rules as they go along? Maybe, maybe not. We're going to continue our discussion with Dr. Murray when the Pulse continues. Stay tuned.
So on the Reggie Reg report, you got the mayor, the police chief, and the Department of Neighborhoods working on behalf of our seniors.
Hello.
Hello, Marcia.
You are one of the, and you are too, Reggie. You are beautiful too. I want to give kudos to you because the burnout structure on our block in our District 1 has been taken down. Kudos to the mayor. And kudos to the police chief. You are just one of the best. Well, you know, in District 1, we seniors love Chief Craig. Now, the question I want to know about, do you ever think that the blue pigs will ever come back?
Well, wow. It's done. Let's do it.
So we are bringing blue pigs back.
Yeah.
You heard it first on 910 Superstation. We're going to get the blue pigs up and running.
That would be awesome. So catch the Reggie Reg report every Sunday morning at 10, right here on 910 a.m., the Superstation.
This is Wade McCree in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. Tell us, what are some of the other aspects you've seen other than just the deadbeat dad doctrine?
Well, sometimes it's not even the deadbeat dads. It can be deadbeat moms as well. Recently, there was a case where we had she was in
Karen Dumas, and you are listening to The Pulse on 910 AM Superstation. Make sure you stay tuned and also follow us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 910 Superstation. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Karen Dumas. We are continuing our conversation with Dr. Stephen Butler Murray, who's president and professor of systematic theology and preaching at the Ecumenical Theological Seminary right here in Detroit, Michigan. Dr. Murray, you said before the break that there are only 2 accredited facilities such as yours here in the city, which is unlike any other major city. Why do you think so?
Well, there's a long history in this city of Roman Catholic private education. If you look at the major private universities that are here, Detroit Mercy, Marygrove, all Roman Catholic. There are no Protestant colleges or universities within the city itself. And so to a certain extent, there's that history of that the Roman Catholic Church in this area has done a fantastic job of establishing higher education outposts. The Protestant Church less so. We don't have a community here that created something like Columbia University in New York City, which is originally an Episcopalian school, or Brown University, which is originally a Baptist school, or Yale or Harvard, which are Congregationalist schools. So we've been kind of coming to this a little late, we Protestants, but we're here and we're loud and we're proud now about that, and it's exciting. I mean, we've been experiencing real growth in the seminary. In the last year, our student body went from about 82 students to 103 students, and I forgot to say before, one of the degree programs that we do offer is a Doctor of Ministry degree, which is for people who have already been doing the work, who have been out there as ministers and pastors, who want to come back and refine their skills and work closely one-on-one with faculty.
Okay, that's great.
Exciting.
That's great. I want to 313-209-9000 is our number if you have any questions or comments for Dr. Murray. But, you know, as we look around, before Cliff and I were talking earlier, you know, it seems like just all around the world, everybody is farther apart than we should be as a human race. And as you and I were talking over the break, it seems that religion is more divisive than it is unifying.
Right.
Why?
Yeah, certainly everyone kind of looks back to to certain heydays of the 50s and 60s where it felt like it was all Protestant, Catholic, Jew, and that in the civil rights
everybody was
movement,
quiet
we were
about
able to
it.
start
That's what it
the
was.
movement. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's true. I mean, there's a lot to that. I think what we see now is that religious violence is something that is out there that we are increasingly concerned about. And I don't want to say that just simply about groups like ISIS. I mean, certainly we in the Christian church can look at the IRA. We can look at the Ku Klux Klan in this country of religious-based violence. So it is certainly not just our Muslim brothers and sisters that have to grapple with that within their community, but indeed we Christians have been doing plenty of that sort of work as well. And I think that one of the things that is important about a theological education is introducing people to people who are not like themselves. One of the callers who came through before was asking about, well, what about the sort of churches that offer some sort of Bible classes and things like that? And that's fantastic. I mean, I'm glad to hear that they're doing that. But one of the things that I think is fantastic about our seminary is that we do have students from 30 different Christian denominations that come together, and so you have to learn about all of these aspects of what church is, not just within the sounding boards of what your own denomination, your own particular church is, but you have to learn from each other. And you actually, I think, can better define who you are at the end of that process because you've been in conversation with people who aren't just like you.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Murray. What is the purpose of church? I mean, let me tell you what I always say, that churches are like restaurants, that you don't have to go there to have a spiritual relationship with your deity or your supreme being, but it's there as an opportunity, just like you don't have to go to a restaurant to eat. Tell me am I wrong? You can say it.
I am not sure that I would say churches are like restaurants.
Okay.
I'm not going to get quoted on that.
All right.
But no, but I do think that what churches do, what their purpose is for people to come together as communities. And it is not so. Yes, of course, people can have individual relationships with God or whatever deity. We tend to talk about God where I work. But indeed, what you have to do is that the entire what Jesus talks about. It's never about one-on-one relationships. It's always about community. It's always about looking out for each other, loving your neighbor as yourself, looking out for the poor in society. It is never about one's own personal spiritual growth all into oneself. And I think that's an incredibly important aspect of what churches need to do and be, it's when you see a church that's all about kind of the cult of the pastor, be scared about that.
I am.
It's what you want to do is see churches that are actually doing something positive in their communities and are lifting up people and are attending to the poor.
Because I think churches have become so commercial. I mean, and I understand, and you talked about earlier about, the business side of it. I guess anytime there's a transaction, if somebody's giving money, there has to be some degree of management. But churches have become so commercial.
Well, that's an interesting comment that Dr. Murray just said, though. Be careful about churches that are like the cult of the pastor. But, Dr. Murray, isn't that most black churches, though?
I would strongly disagree with that, actually.
You got to look at Joel Osteen. Remember, he just got highly criticized. So, I mean, it's not just that. I understand what you're saying, just buying into the whole uplifting.
No, I'm not talking about the prosperity part of it. But a lot of black churches, if that pastor who's been there 30, 40 years, they identify strongly with that pastor more than they do the master. And if that pastor leaves, we saw that out in Southfield with when Reverend Dr. Carlisle Stewart left and how that tore up that whole church. A lot of times we see that, especially in our community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, you look at certain places like Hartford Memorial Baptist Church, where Charles Adams has been the pastor there for 47 years. And I just spoke as part of their 7 Last Words service on Good Friday, so my apologies if I'm going to be a little, speaking too well here. But, I mean, they have done incredible work of developing the community around them and starting up businesses and moving in that way. I think, and often when I've spoken with Adams, he is always intentional about shifting the emphasis off of him and back onto the church, and wanting the church's accomplishments to be highlighted, not his. And this is a man of enormous ability and all that. And I think too about someone like Jeremiah Wright in Chicago at Trinity UCC, who when he stepped down, that church continues to thrive under Otis Moss III. And so I certainly wouldn't want to say that about black churches in that regard.
All right, 313-209. Do we have time? Okay, 313-209-9000. Willie, thank you for the call. Willie?
Oh, yes. I have a question for Dr. Murray.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay, my question is, are your colleges and work that you're doing throughout the United States and other areas, I'm a student of Christianity also because I was raised as a Christian.
Yes.
I just wanted to know, is anything being done among the pupils who are attending these great colleges about the Caucasian image of Jesus Christ, whom I love very much? And I just, because I know that that's disturbing the whole planet Earth, because it's been taught and preached all over the earth. Some people now are becoming unfamiliar with that image and would like to see it removed. And I just wanted to know what the doctor's ideas about that.
Well, I'm going to have him hold that thought because we got to take a break. I'm going to ask Dr. Murray if you can stick around with us for a while. We're going to continue our discussion. Willie, thank you so much for listening and for the call. We'll continue our discussion with Dr. Murray when the pulse continues. It is cloudy and 46 degrees in metropolitan Detroit. Weather brought to you by Weather Vision. Don't go away. Also on this rainy afternoon on Monday, rainy days and Mondays always get us going. We're going to say it that way. It is 5:33. We are continuing our discussion with the Reverend Dr. Stephen Butler Murray, who is President and Professor of Systematic Theology and Preaching at the Ecumenical Theological Seminary right here in the city of Detroit. And Dr. Murray, Willie had a question for you right before the break.
Absolutely. Willie had asked about the kind of the white personification of Jesus,
right.
as often shown in the media and things like that. Certainly what we teach is we try to, as part of our biblical studies courses and church history, we try to actually look at what was real history of the time. The likelihood of Jesus looking Scandinavian, being blonde-haired, blue-eyed, very unlikely. He was a Palestinian Jew whose family lived in as refugees in Egypt, Africa, for a time. If anything, his skin would have looked, very much like, kind of the darker tones of that region. Without question, that's just kind of in the historicity of who that person was. That's what we would have seen.
But then again, that goes to the commercialization, of religion. It's who somebody wants us to believe. But you opened up the interview talking about that the seminary is similar to someone going to law school. Mm-hmm. And I always say the law books are just like the Bible. They're kind of left to interpretation. How do you sort through it and find some core of commonality?
That's an important question. One of the things that is what we have with the Bible is not just the interpretation of people reading the original Greek and Hebrew to give us the English versions that we look at, but entire traditions of how people interpret those texts then. The fancy word that we use is hermeneutics for that. And it's the study of interpretation of the Bible. There's whole fields of that. And that's actually one of the things I think that differentiates one church from another quite often is that interpretation of the Bible. Some very literalistic, some who see it all being very symbolic and open. And that, the kind of the famous one in that regard is Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, there's a document called the Jeffersonian Bible, and what it is Thomas Jefferson didn't believe in any of this, the miracles or anything like that. He thought that this was all some sort of supernatural stuff. So he literally, with scissors, cut out of his personal Bible anything that he saw that was that. But what he did adhere to was he thought that the teachings, the ethical teachings that were there in the Bible were incredibly important. And so that is what it remains in the Jefferson Bible, are all the teachings of Jesus and the classic teachings that came down through the Hebrew prophets and things like that.
So in this political climate where, the issue of our differences, hate, this whole separatist agenda comes into play, tell me what our conversation and how religion or spirituality can play a role in changing the trajectory of where it seems our country is headed.
Absolutely. I think that so much of what we hear in political discourse is what are we against? And I think so much more of what we need to say is, what are we for? What are the not just what are the principles that we'll stand against, but what are the things that we are going to invest ourselves to do to make society better? And I think that too often religion gets like that too. We talk about what are the things that we are against and think that in some way, shape, or form that's a moral platform. And instead of advocating for what it is that we are going to do to achieve, to make society better, to alleviate the suffering of the poor, to make sure that those who are outcast are welcomed openly into our churches.
But building a wall isn't the way to do that. I mean, and certainly, how do we, I saw and posted a picture on social media the other day that was a candid shot of two young children in nursery school. It was a little black girl and a little white girl. They were taking their naps, they were asleep, and they were holding hands. Mm-hmm. And I just captioned it, "Let them be." Mm-hmm. How do we get young people not only involved from a religious perspective, but to use them, if you will, to try to change how we, I don't understand why it's so difficult for us to get along with each other. I mean, locally, nationally, certainly internationally. How do we do that?
I think more and more what we're seeing is that intentionality of interreligious dialogue, especially with youth, is incredibly important for us to be able to tear down the walls that end up being built, whether financed by the Mexican government or not. And so what we see with that is that we have all sorts of programs. There's a guy based out of Chicago named Ibu Patel, who's created a fantastic movement among Chicago-based youth and then among colleges and universities all throughout the United States, in which you intentionally put together people of different religious backgrounds into community service programs. And that in the course of doing community service, these young people are able to talk to one another about what's the impetus for it. Why are they doing this? Why do they care about what they're doing in these communities? And that what you see from that then is these young people understanding one another in a fundamental way that they never have before,
and identifying a commonality. What about the Pope is on Twitter?
Yeah, sure.
Well, he is for the most part. I actually like his tweets. I follow him. What about the use of social media in engaging not just our youth, but actually everybody in terms of sharing different messages, perspective, and views?
Right. What we have now is we have a different world than what you and I grew up in, Karen. And it is a world that is not where we all sit down at 6 o'clock and watch the nightly news to see what's happened. We are sitting here in a studio watching 5 different feeds coming in. Cliff and I are checking our cell phones to see what's going on. And it is that incessant shaping of our consciousness by the media, which is 24/7. It is every moment we are being influenced in some way, shape, or form. And for the church, we have to be on that bandwagon. It is important for us to speak that language, to be part of that common parlance of what is going on in society today. And if the news, and sometimes if the messages of hate are going to be preached to people 24/7, then we ministers and preachers and pastors and chaplains need to be out there tweeting the good news as well.
Because, all the cyber gangsters are there on social media. If you post an article or a picture, that's when people get comfortable because they can hide behind, a Twitter handle or a Facebook page name, and that's when the hate begins to spew.
Agreed.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. Reverend Murray, let me ask you this before we wrap up our interview. Tell us a little bit about how people can learn more about ETS, and for someone that may want to come in for a class to just maybe gain a different perspective, not necessarily trying to get a degree. Is that also possible?
Absolutely. Our website is etseminary.edu, like Ecumenical, Theological, Seminary.edu. Our phone number is 313-831-5200. Again, that's 313-831-5200.
And you had a pretty musically amazing Easter celebration.
Oh, absolutely. It's coming up before this, we had we have a series of concerts going on at the seminary right now called the Arts in Detroit Concert Series. And back on March 18th, we had something called the Colors of Music, and it was Timothy Arikri, who's a Nigerian artist based here in Detroit, who painted a mural of of Detroit with music flowing over it. And during the 2 hours and 45 minutes he was painting this mural, we had artists from the Detroit Medical Orchestra, Yuki Mack, who's a renowned pianist in the area, Brandon Grafius, who's a member of our faculty and a singer-songwriter on guitar, and others that were all performing music throughout this entire time that Timothy was doing this. So definitely go to our website as well to look out for future concerts that we have. The next one is on Saturday, April 30th.
And you also hold, seminars and, talk sessions and different workshops and things, so people can always come out anytime and learn more about themselves and each other.
That's right.
All right. Well, we want to thank Dr. Stephen Butler Murray, President and Professor of Systematic Theology and at the Ecumenical Theological Seminary in Detroit, Michigan. Want to share that website again. It is etseminary.edu, and the number there is 313-5200, 313-831-5200. Thank you, Dr. Murray. I certainly appreciate you being here, and you're welcome back anytime. Certainly I'd like to bring you in as our objective religious contributor in terms of bringing a perspective, that's not one side or the other, but just giving us some insight on some things to help make us all better.
Thank you. My honor to be here, Karen. Thank you so much.
Well, good seeing you. We're going to take a break. There's more of The Pulse right after this.